This episode is brought to you by Mana Carta, the official new trading card game of the Fighting Leaf channel. Coming out April 4th. Be ready. Out of practice. No. Vulnerable. Hi, Internet! And welcome to another episode of... Which one was this again? Gotta review them all. Gotta review them all with your hosts, Fighting Leaf and Husky the Wolf. Anyone who tells you that persistence doesn't pay off is either wrong or a single woman trying to enjoy her evening. In our case, some yahoo in the comments section's been nagging us about covering this movie for actual years. You know who you are. We all know who you are. And we have read every single comment you've left. Everywhere you've left them. If anyone else wants to be that obnoxious... Or we'll just actually ignore you this time. One or the other. But no, we're not actually going to just walk you through the events of the movie. That's actually really tedious and annoying to script. No. Instead, let us take you on a journey through Pokemon the first movie and see what Mewtwo can teach us about dignity, freedom, and the cycle of evil. I am the Kid Movie Ninja. While this ain't gonna be the normal, linear type of review where we just talk through the events of the movie, we're still gonna start right from the beginning. The film actually starts with a dream of open skies and freedom of movement in all directions, and a voiceover asking what it all means. These are what we call genetic memories created from the Pokemon Mew, the most mysterious Pokemon of them all. It ain't actual science, but it'll work for the movie. These clear skies then clash harshly with the cold, sterile reality of his actual birthplace. Now, just think about it for a sec. Imagine the expectation of wide open freedom, real or not, and then when you wake up, you get this. When he's first born, the first thing that Mewtwo sees is a bunch of lab coats patting each other on the back for how good a job they did bringing him to life. It's at this point that Mewtwo's problems with the world begin. This movie operates under the logic of, if it's intelligent enough, it will demand dignity and respect. And Mewtwo's got enough brain power to do this. Therefore, when Mewtwo hears that these scientists are just gonna keep poking and prodding him for science... Wait, hold up. For science! There we go. He realizes he's not going to get any of the love, dignity, or respect, etc. that he believes that he rightly deserves. Unlike most creatures in his position, though, he can actually do something about it. Namely, murder everyone. I love that clip. And given actual Fighting Leaf lore, this next part hits a little bit close to home. A mysterious figure approaches him in a time of anguish and makes him an offer for the very thing he longs for most. In Mewtwo's case, though, it's not more power, it's not wealth, because he has no use for either of those things. All he really wants is a chance to be treated with something called dignity. That's a human word meaning the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. And the most relevant definition of respect is due regard for feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others. Speaking as an animal, most of us don't really care about lofty stuff like dignity. All we want is for other creatures around us not to hurt or frustrate us. As long as enough of our physical needs are met, we're good. Dignity, however, cranks that desire for respect way up. It's not enough to simply have your physical needs being met. It's about being seen as something other than a lesser being. Listen to Mewtwo's, internal monologue. Yeah, Mewtwo's normal form of communication is telepathic projection, so it's impossible to tell if anyone can hear what he's thinking about unless they react to it.
These humans, they care nothing for me. Is that my purpose? Am I just an experiment? A laboratory specimen?
I know we're harping on this scene a lot longer than the scene actually lasts, but it's really crucial to understand this so that we get Mewtwo's motivations for the rest of the film. Right, so where were we? Giovanni was making a deal with Mewtwo. Right. So Giovanni makes a deal with Mewtwo. Mewtwo fights for him, and Giovanni will give him purpose and respect that he longs for, promising that they'll be equals. And that makes him a liar, 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 liar! There is no equality between them, and the tasks he's having Mewtwo perform are so far beneath him as to prove frustrating. Then Giovanni makes his great mistake. He stops the lie.
You were created by humans to obey humans. You could never be our equal.
He just said that to a creature that could vaporize his head with a thought. Giovanni is an idiot. That was the final straw. Mewtwo didn't ask to be created, and the people who put him on Earth treated him like a slave from the start. So, as a creature who craves freedom and wields power, he bursts from his location, destroys his fancy focusing armor, and sets out for his plan to remake the entire world to conform to his will and no one else's. In his eyes, humanity lost all rights to exist given how they've treated him. And the trainers he saw appeared on the surface to be doing the exact same thing to other Pokemon too. So what's his plan? Kill everyone, everywhere, and start again with creatures that he deems worthy. Imagine that. Giving something a reason to hate your guts will make it so that it hates your guts! There's a concept in criminology about how a person who is emotionally detached from his community is far more likely to commit crimes. Elements of that are repeating themes in criminal and supervillain backstories all throughout fiction, and Mewtwo is basically no different. Even just looking at him, he feels like an alien with no homeworld. Now, let's contrast that with a different creature far more grounded on planet Earth. Take it away, Cabbage Head! Thank you, Husky. Eugene Mortimer Cabbage, Pokemon Professor speaking, and I have been asked to talk to you about Pokemon number 151, Mew! During the first generation of Pokemon, Mew was cited as being the first Pokemon in existence. While there is very little definitive information about Mew, dozens of theories exist. Other than the Pokemon Ditto, Mew is the only Pokemon with access to the technique Transform, which allows it to transform its body down to the genetic level into any other Pokemon or even object it wants. And it has the ability to learn every Pokemon technique that exists. All of these elements put together make it the exact opposite situation of its clone, Mewtwo, making it inexorably connected to the Pokemon world. These details not only help us to pad out the video, but help give important context to what the heck Mew is even doing. In short, while Mewtwo is an artificial Pokemon, Mew itself is not only a product of nature, but arguably a jumpstart to nature itself in this world. In the movie itself, though, Mew doesn't care about any of that. All it wants to do is explore the world, just metaphorically poking stuff to see what it does. Up until this point, it seems Mew was in some kind of hibernation, and was only roused, possibly due to the actions of Mewtwo. Yeah, stirring up a worldwide mega death storm will do that. But even on its way to investigate the disturbance in the Force, it still goes out of its way to just play with stuff. Mew just loves everything. Even Team Rocket is given the benefit of the doubt, as Mew just wants to know stuff. Mew doesn't have to wonder about its place in the universe. It probably doesn't even understand the concept of it, not because it's any less intelligent than Mewtwo, but because he's just so comfortably nestled within the universe that he just doesn't have to think about it. We don't know what the beginning of Mew's life looked like, but we can assume that it never learned to hate. We can never really understand why, but we have some theories about it. Reason 1. Expectations. We believe nothing ever came along to give Mew any false expectations about what kind of world it lived in. Contrast that with Mewtwo, who first dreamed about freedom only to gain enslavement. Reason 2. There are very few serious threats to him. He's got enough power and evasion to pretty much deal with anything he's realistically gonna face in the world. Well, that was true until Mewtwo came along. But we're talking a lot about what Mew is in this movie, and not a lot about what Mew does. So let's go ahead and sum it up right now. Floats around, plays with stuff, and fights Mewtwo. That's it. And that's not a knock against the movie. Sure, it's not much, but this part doesn't really need to overstay its welcome. Besides, there's still one more player that we gotta talk about. Ash Ketchum, the boy from Pallet Town. His one goal in life is to become a Pokemon master, the trainer recognized worldwide for being the very best. But if you listen to the original theme song, you'll know he doesn't just want to be the best there is, but the best there ever was! But he doesn't actually behave like someone who has that kind of goal, generally speaking. Nah, he's determined to get there the old-fashioned way. Hard work, determination, and building bonds! But why is that? Why is this so important to him? This, unfortunately, is where the movie's flaws begin to really show. The film doesn't make any attempt to explain why he wants this. But one thing is abundantly clear. Ash ain't Giovanni. He does not want power. He barely seems to want fame. So what the heck does he want? The movie never actually explains his motivation, but as one who has seen hundreds of episodes of the anime and dozens of movies starring this guy, I'm pretty confident in my interpretation. For now, let's just explore his actual actions in the film. We first meet him moping around being hungry. Then, when he gets a chance to battle a trainer, he magically perks up because according to him,
the Pokemon battle isn't work.
This is really telling for his character because it shows that he longs for the chance to, well, do what it is that trainers do? But why? Is he bloodthirsty or power hungry like Giovanni? Nah, something else is going on. But that's probably difficult to tell on a surface level. Yeah, shortly after the initial battle, a Dragonite shows up to deliver an invitation to some fancy Pokemon battle challenge thingy on an island villa. This is just Mewtwo fishing for the best trainers he can find to enact his evil scheme, but to Ash, it's just another chance to test himself and his team against the best trainers he can find. That begs the question, why is battling so important to him? It's not just Ash. Pokemon battles are the primary way that we see humans interacting with Pokemon in this series as a whole. Human bark order, Pokemon hit each other. So is Mewtwo right? Are humans just barbaric slave drivers that want nothing more than to lord over lesser beings? Stay tuned, because the answer might shock you. When the invited trainers show up, Mewtwo is whipping up a storm that authorities describe as the worst on record, which filters out a lot of the weaker trainers. Of course, Ash and the gang aren't going to be stopped by this, and so recruit the help of some Minnesotans to help them cross the stormy seas. Well, okay, they're actually Team Rocket, but that's not important. What matters is that they arrive on the island only to find out that a Pokemon is running the show. He tells them what he intends to do, and since most people don't take kindly to being eradicated, they take issue with this plan and try to fight back.
Gyarados Hyper Beam Attack!
It ends poorly. Then Mewtwo uses these evil Pokeballs to steal away everyone's Pokemon for the sake of cloning them. This is where a linear summation of events has to end because that's not what this is about. There is one particular scene now that we have to cover. Brace yourselves, folks. Time for the tearjerker. Thanks to Ash, the captured Pokemon are set free and are able to stand up to the clones Mewtwo created of them. The result is a giant brawl that elicits a strange reaction from everyone witnessing it.
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this.
Why can't you two understand it's not right to force Pokemon to battle this way?
This just proves that fighting is wrong.
Now, it's easy to look at this bit and call them all hypocrites. The entire premise of the show revolves around pitting these Pokemon against each other in combat sport. What's more is that this moral here isn't even what the movie's been building up to. What this has actually been building up to is a lesson about the dangers of hate and the cyclical nature of evil. Talking about how violence is bad is just not actually relevant. You know what is relevant? What Ash does next. Mew and Mewtwo both charge up their attacks, and Ash can't take it anymore! He tries to break up the fight, heedless of his ultimate powerlessness in the face of these titanic forces. That's when everyone sees the ultimate consequences of Mewtwo's hate. A cold and lifeless future. This isn't about one person's loss. It's about opening their eyes to the reality of what Mewtwo is forcing everyone to fight for. Which is as good a segue as any for the final segment of this video. Something the movie probably should have done but never does. What is a Pokemon? Professor, care to do the honors?
Why, certainly. Now, in order to cover such a pretentious topic, let me explain what Pokemon are certainly not, and that is ordinary animals. They are not ordinary animals. In fact, the earliest lore revealed about Pokemon expressly showed that they shared massive amounts of genetic information with one another. That is to say, this Geodude is about as closely related to Gardevoir as human beings are related to chimpanzees. This, of course, has some very strange implications, and brings me to my first and probably most important point. Pokemon are freaking weird! And part of this weirdness expresses itself in their relationship to the sport of Pokemon battles. Even in universe, there is contention about the ethics behind such activities, but the truth of the matter is, wherever one stands on the topic, one cannot possibly apply normal animal standards to this discussion, because they simply do not apply. Because, to oversimplify massive amounts of scientific study and discovery, Pokemon are simply built different, as the kids say. They are capable of unbelievable feats of strength, speed, and survival. Even when struck by their elemental weaknesses, their ability to recover from such things far exceeds that of either humans or mundane beasts. The fact of the matter is, whether they embrace battle or actively avoid it, they are simply built for it, both in a Doylean sense and in a Watsonian sense, meta sense and in an in-story sense, for you Philistines who don't know what words mean. Ultimately, using a Pokemon for battle is like taking a ship out to sail in the open seas. Yes, it's going to be rough, but that's exactly what Pokemon were built for. So, what exactly is a Pokemon? It is a powerful fighting monster tamed by man to become more than they would have ever become otherwise, either for the better, such as with Ash Ketchum, or for worse, like with Giovanni. This has been a Kabajian scientific diatribe. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Cabbage. Now, as he said, these are still gross oversimplifications of a very complex topic, but this should give you enough context to understand what's happening next. So these Pokemon, how do they feel about this craziness? Within this movie, we see them more or less just following what their trainers tell them to do. The big question is why they do it. It starts with the Pokemon battle at the start of the film, where each individual is eager to show off their skills and strength against their opponents, and again later against the storm. We already established earlier that they were built for this, able to recover from injury in ways that normal animals can't. But are there any Pokemon that are sympathetic to Mewtwo's cause? As far as we can tell, not really. What about that Dragonite who delivered that invitation to Mewtwo's island? We don't really know anything about that one. It just shows up for one scene and then is never seen again. Maybe he agreed with Mewtwo? Maybe he was mind-controlled like this lady. Maybe he was just following orders like a Pokemon would a trainer. We just don't know. Most of what we do know actually comes from 2 points in the film. Once during the final battle, and once earlier during the part we haven't discussed yet. The exposition dump! This is Officer Jenny, a recurring character, sort of, from the TV series, and that lady next to her
Listen to me. The prophets have...
comes from the foreign land of somewhere else. You know how every culture has its own flood story? Well, the Pokemon world is no different. This lady talks about how this storm is so bad that it's prompting her to retell her version of it. One where things got so bad that all the Pokemon wept, and their magical tears fixed foreshadowing. Obviously, her story doesn't stop the most determined trainers, or we wouldn't have a movie. But there's one more piece of this story that we really need to consider, and that's the fact that ever since that day, there haven't been any Pokemon tears? So what, they just never had any reason to be sad after that? I don't know, but I have a theory. Which is all we get for trying to understand a movie like this. But now, though, we gotta go back to the saddest part of the movie. This moment where Ash slowly turns to stone drove so many children to tears in theaters worldwide. On one level, it was because we lost our hero when all he wanted to do was stop this senseless fighting. But on another, something bigger just happened. But to fully understand it, we need to walk back a bit. Meet Meowth and Clone Meowth. Unlike the other clones who started fighting without question, Clone Meowth has no interest in it and gives a speech about how they all live under the same sky, clone or not. How do the Pokemon feel about this? First and foremost, they are not like Mewtwo. Their need for dignity is not on his level. They can be controlled far more easily than he can, and Mewtwo takes full advantage of this fact. And just look at this final battle. They're all miserable, clone or not. None of them signed up for this. Mewtwo just plopped them into this life the same way the scientists did to him. Mewtwo, by doing this, became just as bad as the humans he hates. And thus, the cycle of evil is complete. Doing evil onto one person makes it more likely for them to do evil onto others. But now, for the moment we've been building up to this entire video. Ash is caught between the blasts. His body isn't disintegrated, but falls limp and slowly turns to stone. Pikachu, Ash's most loyal partner, tries to jumpstart Ash's system with electric shocks. Over and over he tries, but to no avail. The other Pokemon, cloned and not cloned alike, watch on in horror. Not at a single tragedy, though. The real horror comes from the realization that this is the world that Mewtwo is trying to create. A new era born of hate and ruin. This is their future. What happens next, while foreshadowed technically, is a cheesy and cliched mess that gets Leaf misty-eyed every time. What, you think I was made of stone or something? The Pokemon all shed the first tears in millennia, and they all enshroud Ash Ketchum's body, rejuvenating him to his previous form. Yeah, it's as if the universe is giving Mewtwo one last chance to walk away from his crazy plan and really think about what he's doing. And think about it he does. He'd never met a human like Ash before, and the possibility that there are more like him gives him pause. Pokemon can be exploited for power and other stuff, but that's not what they really want. They want to fight, sure, but not for this. Mewtwo understands this now, and takes them away, wiping everyone's memories so that he and the clones he created may live in peace. The world is not yet ready to know of the most powerful of Pokemon just yet. The end! Wait, that wasn't a linear review, though. Well, we started at the beginning and ended at the end. The stuff in the middle is just the stuff in the middle. Wow, what a reference. So what's this movie about? Essentially, it's a contrast between two, or actually three in this case, opposing forces, each represented by a different character. The first force is contempt, represented by Giovanni. Everything is beneath him, and so everything is exploitable. Then you have the force of hate, embodied by Mewtwo. The world enslaved and belittled him from the very moment he was born, and so had earned his ire and a right to be destroyed. And then you have a third force rising up from their shadows, casting a light that could not be overcome, represented by Ash Ketchum. What is Ash's motivation? It's love. Ash loves Pokemon. His Pokemon, your Pokemon, wild Pokemon, even Mewtwo. His quest to become the very best like no one ever was? It's just an excuse to engage with Pokemon, to indulge in his love and to express his love as far and wide as he possibly can. That is his motivation. That is what keeps him going. And that is what Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, is ultimately about. So that was our needlessly deep and pretentious review of Pokemon the first movie. We really hope that it was worth the wait, and if it wasn't, you know who to blame. Now, if you'll excuse us, Husky and I need to see if they're still making good bad or bad bad episodes. I am the kid movie ninja.